You know, when you think of history's greatest scientists, a few names always come to mind, right? Einstein, Curie, Galileo. But there's one name that inspires this unique, almost cult-like devotion: Nikola Tesla. He's become this larger-than-life figure, a megastar, the ultimate symbol of suppressed genius. But how much of that legend is actually true? In this explainer, we're going to separate the myth from the man. And the goal isn't to tear him down, not at all, but to understand his real and honestly just as incredible story.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start by looking at the legend that's built up around him today. Then, we're going to jump in and tackle three of the biggest myths: his patent count, his role with electricity, and his grand vision for free energy. After that, we'll get into the man himself, the real person, to finally understand his true, undeniable legacy.
I mean, today, Tesla is a full-blown cultural icon. The story you usually hear is that he was this lone genius who single-handedly invented the modern world, only to get crushed by corporate greed. It's a really powerful story. But is it the whole story?
If you spend any time online, the claims are just endless. You'll see posts that say he invented AC power, that he held over 700 patents, that he figured out free energy for the entire planet. Oh, and also that he invented radio, radar, neon lights. The list just goes on. And the picture painted is of this perfect, humble genius who was just too good for this world. So let's start by looking at some cold, hard numbers.
So the first myth we're going to bust is a big one: the idea that Tesla was the most prolific inventor in history. You see this claim repeated everywhere, but the actual data? Well, it tells a pretty different story.
So, let's just ask the question straight up. If we're using the number of patents as our measuring stick, which is a pretty standard way to look at an inventor's output, does Tesla really hold the top spot?
The number you always hear thrown around is 700, maybe even more. And what's really interesting is how people get to that number. A lot of the time, it's inflated by including patents he supposedly lost to his rivals, like Marconi or Edison.
But when you look at the documented facts, the picture changes. Tesla held about 112 patents right here in the US. And if you look at all 26 countries he filed in, the total comes out to right around 300. Now, don't get me wrong, that's still a massive number and a huge testament to his genius, but it's not 700.
And this chart, wow, this really puts it all into perspective. Tesla's 300 patents are seriously impressive, for sure, but they don't even put him in the top 100 most prolific inventors. The list is topped by people like Shinpei Yamazaki, a Japanese inventor who has over 6,600 patents for stuff like LCD screens and flash memory. This doesn't make Tesla any less of a genius, it just shows us that invention isn't some simple numbers game.
So, okay, if he wasn't the most prolific inventor by the numbers, what about his impact? Let's tackle the biggest claim of them all, the thing he's most famous for: alternating current, or AC. You know the story: Edison championed DC, and our hero Tesla invented AC to save the day.
But the history of AC goes back much, much further than that. The journey really starts way back in 1831, when Michael Faraday first discovered the basic principles of electromagnetic induction. Just a year after that, a guy named Hippolyte Pixii used those principles to build the very first alternator, a machine that could actually generate AC. And by 1855, that's a full year before Tesla was even born, AC was already being used in Europe for things like electrotherapy. Tesla's big moment doesn't come until 1888, decades later.
And this is where Tesla's genius really, truly shines. He didn't invent AC, but he absolutely perfected its use. He developed this incredibly elegant and efficient motor that didn't need parts that wore out all the time. This one invention solved a massive engineering problem and made using AC power across America practical, efficient, and cheap. That was his game-changing contribution.
And you see this same pattern with a lot of other inventions he gets credit for. While Tesla did some pioneering work on radio transmission, it was Marconi who commercialized it and gets the historical credit. The principles of radar, laid out by Hertz and Holzmeier. The foundations for neon and fluorescent lights were set by Geissler and Stokes, and the modern transformer was developed by others before Tesla came along. He was a brilliant researcher in so many fields, but often it was other people who took those ideas across the finish line.
Okay, so this brings us to another part of the myth: Tesla as this selfless visionary who discovered free energy but was stopped by greedy capitalists. And this story all centers around his most ambitious project ever, the Wardenclyffe Tower.
Tesla's vision for Wardenclyffe was just mind-blowing. He wanted to use the Earth itself as a giant conductor to beam electricity anywhere in the world, wirelessly, for free. He got some initial funding from JP Morgan, but it was just a tiny fraction of what he needed. But the project's biggest hurdle wasn't the money, it was physics. You see, there's this thing called the inverse square law, which means energy from a single point dissipates dramatically over distance. Think about it like a candle. It's bright when you're right next to it, but it fades to nothing from far away. The same thing happens with wireless power. In the end, the project was just scientifically impractical and economically impossible, and that's why Morgan pulled out.
And here's a little bit of fascinating irony for you. We all know the story of how Edison stubbornly stuck to his inferior DC power, even when AC was clearly the better technology. Well, Tesla kinda had a similar blind spot. He was totally fixated on his two-phase AC system and stubbornly resisted the more efficient three-phase systems that were being developed in Europe. And those three-phase systems, they quickly became the new global standard. Turns out, even geniuses can get stuck in their ways.
So if he wasn't this flawless saint, then who was the real Nikola Tesla? Let's peel back one more layer of the myth. The man himself was far more complex, way more fascinating, and deeply human than the legend ever lets on.
For one thing, Tesla had a monumental ego. He famously dismissed Einstein's theory of relativity with this incredibly biting quote. And he wasn't just offering a scientific counterargument, he was aggressively rejecting one of the greatest scientific breakthroughs of the 20th century without any real evidence, calling anyone who believed it ignorant. And his personality was just deeply eccentric. He made these wild, baseless claims, like saying he measured cosmic rays moving 50 times faster than light. He wrote about having this profound, romantic love for a specific pigeon, saying, "I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman." He had an intense, irrational hatred for women wearing pearl earrings. And he lived this high society life of luxury, not poverty. He was just really bad at managing his money.
So, after peeling back all these layers of myth, what are we left with? It's time to rebuild his legacy on the foundation of what he really did, which was, frankly, monumental. All right, to sum it all up, what is Tesla's true legacy? Nikola Tesla was a brilliant, world-changing engineer. His polyphase AC induction motor was an absolute masterpiece, and his fierce advocacy was essential to AC winning the war of the currents here in America. He didn't invent every single gear in the machine of progress, but he designed one of the most critical ones.
So you might be asking yourself, okay, but why does any of this matter? Why go to all this trouble to correct the Tesla myth?
Because here's the thing, science is not the story of lone geniuses. It's a collaborative relay race that spans generations. When we give Tesla credit for everything, we erase the names of Faraday, Pixie, Gallard, Ferraris, and countless other brilliant minds who passed the baton to him. The myth of the single hero actually does a huge disservice to the way scientific discovery really works.
You know, maybe the best way to think about it comes from another scientific giant, Isaac Newton. He said, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." Nikola Tesla was, without any doubt, a giant. And the best way to honor his true legacy is to also see and to honor the giants on whose shoulders he stood.